Hi all. So today we are going to see the concept of triggers, which is your seventh exercise. Okay. So far we have seen what are the different kinds of PLSQL commands. Okay. We have seen only two different types like uh, procedures and functions. And today's class we'll see what is triggers. Okay. So that also comes under PLSQL. Okay. So where you are going to do the execution of your programming language in the form of trigger. Okay. So in PLSQL, you would have seen how to do that, right? So if you have a blocks, different kinds of blocks called declaration block, execution block, and exception block, through which you can post or generate you can write a programming code, and through which the code will be generating you an output from the table. Okay, so these are the things that we have seen in our sixth experiment. Now we'll see what is trigger. A trigger is actually an automatically executed or fired program. Okay, and even whenever an event occurs, the trigger will be automatically ejected or executed or fired. For example, if I'm creating some table and I want a trigger or a pop-up message should become whenever a new row is inserted, then the trigger is the right way to do it. So trigger is kind of an pop-up message or an alert box usually we get in our web page or in our programming. Okay, so the same way we can also use the trigger to create an alert. Okay, so this is used in our DML, DDL, and all the commands. Okay, that we have seen so far. Okay, and also we can also use this in this server login, log off, and everything. Okay, so these are so we'll see the example, see with an example to know more about a trigger. Okay, so before seeing the example, we'll see what is the benefit of trigger. Okay, so the trigger is an derived column. So it derives the column value automatically. Okay, so by trigger, okay, if I want to have the column, for example, mark 1 and mark 2, and if I want to calculate these two marks and put it as a total in third column, I can use trigger to do it. Okay, it is mostly used as a referential integrity. Okay, that is when the primary key and foreign keys are used, and you can also generate the information based on the login details of the customer or an employee. Okay, the triggers creates an alert when the user is logging in and he is logging out, how long he is there in the system. So these things we can generate. These information can be collected by using triggers. Okay, so mostly the triggers are also used for security purpose when we no need some changes in the that should be reflected in the system, or if you don't need anything to be updated or inserted in your table, so that time you can use this trigger in order to do that kind of operations also. So it also helps you to impose the security, and also it also provides a transactions like invalid. It will provide prevention in transactions, invalid unnecessary transactions. Okay, so these are the benefits of triggers, and the syntax of trigger is create or replace trigger. Okay, so this is your first line. So this is your header part. Okay, so header part has the create or replace tag followed by your trigger name. Okay, so when so your trigger name must be unique and it should not be repeated. Okay, then this is the place where you are telling your system that whether the trigger should be. I told you trigger is a pop-up or a message that will be displayed. So you're just telling when the trigger should be fired, whether it is before or after. Okay, so once you're defining whether it is before or after, then you're specifying when to happen, where to happen, whether if you are inserting a table, the trigger should happen, or updating a table, trigger should happen, or deleting some values in the table, the trigger should pop up. So you're telling when to occur and where to occur. Okay, then option, this column name is optional. Generally, you will not use this much. If you're updating a column, you can use an optional column name. Optional, it is optional. It is not mandatory to have this field because we are having the next line is about table name. So table name is much more needed rather than the column name. So you can also the syntax shows just you can also add a column name. Okay, from and next line is about table name. Okay, you need some table name. Okay, so the table name. Okay, on which the triggers should be popped. Then your referencing old as O and new as N. So if you are changing some values, suppose you are taking old salary and replacing with the new salary. Okay, so that can be represented as O and N, and this is very important for each row. So you can generate the trigger for each row as well as for all the rows. Okay. So for example, if there is a table, okay, so the table has three columns like name, ID, and marks. Okay. So I'm just creating a trigger for whenever new row is inserted. When the new row is inserted, you have to create a trigger called new row inserted. Okay, this is my trigger. Okay, so generally in your page, in your web page, you would have got the trigger alert box in the top of your page, right? The same way your trigger will be generated whenever new row is created. Okay, it is not like pop-up, it will be your one line, single line statement will be displayed along with your output. Okay, that is what. Okay, so that just you understand what I'm trying to teach. Okay, for each row. Okay, so the new row is inserted, and if I'm using for each row option, this particular statement is used. If it is used, then what happens is, and whenever a new row is inserted, this message will be generated. Okay, whenever new row is created, the new this message will be generated. If I'm not using this each row command, then what happens? Whatever the number of rows inserted, at the end of insertion, you will get the trigger only once. Okay, so if you are using each row option, then every time whenever the row is inserted, the trigger will be popped. If this option is not used, then it will be giving you alert only one time at the end of the insertion. Okay, next is when condition. This is also optional. When we need, if you want to check something or if you want to use this for some condition checking, then you can go for this, but it is also an optional one. Then this is your PL/SQL block. Okay, general PL/SQL block where you have declaration, begin, exception, and end. Okay, so this is the syntax of your trigger. Okay, so I hope you are getting or understanding the syntax now. So we'll see we'll see some examples in order to understand more about trigger. Okay, so we'll see an example. Okay, so this thing, fine. Fine. So let me open the SQL. Okay. So minute. Fine. So the code I have already created, I have already done. So I just want to run the code because sometimes the syntax errors are coming, which is taking time to solve it in the video itself. So I'll take the example which I have copied and pasted, and I have executed this thing and I have posted it in the PPT also. So I'll explain you while executing what it actually happens. Okay. So here we are going to create a table for create a trigger for pop-up message whenever new data is inserted in the table. So our aim is to create a trigger message after inserting of data in the table. Okay. So first I'll give for so see here. So first, what is the syntax I have given? The syntax is create or replace trigger name. So here create or replace trigger T1. So my trigger name is T1 here. Next, I want to specify when the trigger should happen. Okay, so I have given it as after. Okay, after what? Either it is insertion or update or delete. I have given it as insert because our aim of the program is to create trigger whenever insertion happens. Okay, on users is the table name. So my user table is, I'll show you the table. System. Fine. Okay, this is my ID and password. So select start from users. Sorry, users. Okay, so this is the table name. See here, I have created some values inside the table. So this is my table which has column name and ID. And if I'm entering a new row in this particular table, that trigger should be popped up. And this is the command. Okay, this is the coding. Okay, so for each row that I have given the specification, every time whenever a new trigger is inserted, you have to create the alert. Okay, so I have created it. Okay, next is begin. Begin says that is the execution block. Then you have to just going to display the output row is inserted end. Okay, so here the trigger T1 is created whenever after inserting of a new row on the table user, you have to create a trigger by saying row is inserted. Okay, so I'll just copy this and I'll paste this. Okay, so what I got the option as answer as trigger is created. Okay, so whenever the new line, okay, so now the trigger was created successfully without any error message. Okay, so now I'll try to insert value inside the user. Okay, so I want to insert into users is the table name. Okay, name comma ID are the columns and values are name is John. Okay, and ID is okay John and ID is 007. So 008. Okay, so I have inserted. Okay, so here since the trigger was successfully created for the user table, why I didn't get the answer? Because I didn't set the server output on. So whenever the server output is on, you will get your output properly. PL/SQL block will be giving you output properly. Set server output on. Okay, so it is on now. So see here, when you are executing it normally, your answer will be in this form. But when I created a trigger and I have created the server output on, so I want to create, whenever I'm inserting the value, okay, and okay, what happened here is, here you have the trigger was created. See here, insert into username. Okay, initially I have inserted. That time you just got an answer called one row created. But here now you got row is inserted. The trigger message was popped. Okay, so this is how you will do the trigger. So trigger is nothing but your answer will be, your message will be popped whenever you are doing any kind of operations like updation, insertion or deletion. And you can also specify when that trigger to happen. And you can also specify for each row or everything. Okay, so this is what your trigger is. Okay, so this message is about, so this question, this is about your entering. The second example that I have given is after updation, your trigger should be there. Okay, so here create a trigger. Trick2 is my trigger name. After update, okay, after is the event and the update is the event of ID. Of ID is a column name. Okay, on users. Okay, user is the table name. Okay, so here I have used on the column. If there is a change or updation in the column ID, then the trigger row is updated should be popped up. So here I have given, because here see the table, this is the user table where these are the four values. Okay, so I am trying to update the name of Peter. The name is equal to Peter. Peter's ID to 12. Initially Peter ID was 99. So now I'm trying to update the ID of Peter as 12. So here there are two Peters are there. So what it should happen, two times the updation will be happening. So here since I have given for each row, so what will happen, for each row the trigger will be popped up. So because of that, there was two trigger message. There is two trigger message. Okay. So here I have created a trigger for each row after the updation of a column ID. So what happens, since there are two Peters, so the trigger was popped for two times. If you are using without this line, second line for each row option, then what happens? It will be popped. The trigger will be popped for only one time. Okay, so this is how you can use this for each row option. Okay, then you can also drop a trigger by using this command, drop trigger, trigger name. So you'll get a trigger drop. So if I trigger 2 was update option. So initially when you create trigger 2, whenever there is an updation in ID column, the row up is updated message you got. Now after deleting the trigger 2, you're after, if you are trying to update something, you will not get the trigger message. Okay, that is the difference. Okay, so the same that this part is called as statement level trigger and okay, sorry, fine. Okay, so this part is where you are, if you are giving this particular line, then that will give you a row level trigger. Okay, if this line is not given, then it will be giving you a statement level trigger. Okay, so the row level trigger are fired each time for each row affected by SQL statement. Whenever there's a change in each row, the trigger will be updated. Or if the trigger is not fired only at once at the collection of rows, then that is called a statement level trigger. This statement level trigger and row level trigger can be achieved by adding and removing this particular line. Okay, if the for each row is given, then that will be giving you row level trigger. For each row, this particular line is not given, then it will give you statement level trigger. Okay, so then there are three different types of events you can do with the triggers, like insert, update and delete. And you can also timing, you can specify the timing, whether it should have, the trigger should happen before or after the event. And also we have seen when each row trigger or each statement trigger by using this particular option for each row option. Okay, so this example, so I'll show an example in order to, so we'll see this example and we'll find how the trigger actually works. Okay, so this example is about, okay, so let me open the coding part. Okay, so Okay, so first, this example is about finding difference after the salary updation using a trigger. Okay, so here the program aim of the program is to create get a salary. Okay, the table will have two values like ID and salary. Okay, so the salary will be updated by using update command. So whenever the ID the updation happens, the trigger should come and it should take the old salary and the new salary that is updated, and it should show the difference between the two salary. Okay, that is the aim of a program. Okay, I hope you are getting it. Okay, so what is the aim of the program is, okay, so here there will be a update through update we are going to solve this. Okay, our aim is to update salary. Okay, so once the salary is updated, you should get the updated salary. Okay, old salary. Okay, followed by your uh, okay, updated salary, old salary, and get the difference between the old salary and the new salary. That is the aim of the program. So we can achieve this through by trigger. Okay, so we'll see how it is achieved. Okay, so okay, so fine. So I'll show this itself. Okay, so just a minute. Fine. So see here I have created the trigger call. Sorry, I have created the trigger called I3, trigger 3. Okay, so trigger 3 is the trigger name. Okay, so after updation on customer is the table name. So this is the customer table which has ID and salary. Okay, so for each row, so whenever there's an updation in each row, you are going to pass a trigger. Okay, so what we need difference, right? So we need difference. Okay, old salary is already there. New salary will be got from the new salary will be got from the user, will be through updation command. Old salary is already in the table. So this can be fetched directly. But we need to calculate the difference. So in order to calculate the difference, you have to declare it. So you have declare operation, and difference is the key variable name, and it is of number data type, because difference is going to hold the number variable, number value. Okay, begin is the execution part. So first we are finding the difference by minusing, okay, subtracting new salary with the old salary. New salary will get from updation table, updation query, and old salary will get it from the table. Okay, through this we can find the difference. Then we are going to display the dbms underscore output dot put line will display the content between the quotes, right? Content between the packets. Okay, old salary. Okay, you are fetching the old salary detail. New salary, you'll take it from the updated value. Okay, updation given by this query command, and dbms output line, you are just going to display the difference. So in your output, you'll have old salary, new salary, and the difference. Okay, so now the trigger was created successfully because there is no syntax error. We have declared a variable. We have found why, how the difference between new salary and old salary. We are trying to display old salary, new salary, and difference also. Okay. So now the query is executed. The trigger was created successfully. Okay. So when I'm trying to create, so now I want to update the, unlike the functions and procedures, we don't have to call the trigger. Rather than we have to do the event which was mentioned in the trigger creation. So here in the trigger creation, we have mentioned there is going to be an update operation on the table customer. So I'm going to update the table. Update customer, set salary is equal to 82,000 where ID is equal to 1. So what is happening? For ID is equal to 1, we are going to update the salary as 82,000. So initially it was 78,000. So this is the old salary. New salary was 82. Okay, so the difference is 4,000. Okay, we all know. So we'll check whether the trigger is creating or not. So yes, the trigger was after pressing enter button, it gave me an older salary of 78,000, new salary of 82,000, and difference was 4,000. Okay, try the same method and try in your check the same coding in your SQL, you will get the right answer. Okay, because I solved this problem, so only I'm explaining it properly, and I'm asking you, I'm suggesting you to do the program in this way. So this through this the trigger can, with the help of trigger, we can do this also. Okay, so next is, I told you right in the first slide, when you see, we can also do this kind of login, log off, and the error message can also be thrown in your so see here the login, log off information, and you can also prevent the unnecessary transactions, right? Like update come, if I don't want some updation made by some user, I can also prevent that by using trigger. So that example we'll see in this. Okay, so here throwing error during the updation process. Okay, so again created a customer, so we are going to create a trigger whenever there's an updation or a table customer, we are going to block it. We are trying to prevent it by providing a trigger. Okay, so create or replace trigger. Trigger 4 is my trigger name after update. So if there is an updation on customer table on each row, okay, what you have to do? We have to raise an application. Fine. So here rise application error is the trigger message. Okay, so this error will be there are list of errors where you can use this error number to measure to say that you cannot perform this update. Okay, and that message you can do is you cannot perform the update. Okay, so the error code is 2001. Okay, so please remember this number if you want to prevent the user to update or insert, or you have to stop something, stop the user to do some by doing something. Okay, from doing something you can use this error code. Okay, so and this trigger was created successfully. So when I tried to update the particular table and ID column, it was showing me an error and it says that cannot perform an update. The trigger message was generated. Okay, so this is how you can use trigger for prohibiting the user from updating the table. Okay, and this is very beautiful program. Okay, where you have created this program I have created in such a way. Okay, so just listen to it. Okay, so here I have created a table called login. Okay, so my table was created and with the login ID. Okay, then login time. Okay, then finally action. Okay, so what it is that I'm just going to get the user entering into the system, logging out from the system. Okay, along with the his ID and the time. Okay, so in okay, so now my table is created. We can generally what we'll do, we'll insert the value directly into this directly into by using query, and we'll insert value. Now we are not going to insert the value. We are directly going to create a trigger to insert the value by itself. Okay, so you are the user through which your ID will be collected by the trigger. Your login time will be your login time will be um, your login time will be managed. Your login time will be updated in the table, and your actions also will be managed by the trigger. Okay, so through trigger we are going to get the input value. Okay, so first we'll see. Okay, so I have created a table with the login ID, login time and action. Okay, so now I'm going to create a trigger called trick 5 after log on. So log on is the keyword. Okay, log on will give you the login details. Okay, on schema is also a keyword. So not only a particular thing, on whole schema you're going to get the login details. Okay, it is not about table, it's about schema, it's about your entire database. Okay, so begin is the execution part, insert into login. Okay, so now we are going to insert. Okay, so we are making trigger to insert the values inside the table. Okay, so login ID, login time, actions are the data I have given. Values are user. So login ID will be the username of your system, of your SQL. Login time will be system date. Okay, what is the date of SYS date will fetch you the time and date of your system, and action was login. So if I give login, the login details will be fetched. If I'm giving logout, your logout system will be fetched. Okay, so trigger was created. It's a very simple trigger where you're inserting the value through this trigger, and the value inserting are not the normal values. You're just making the trigger to generate the values or collect the values from the system itself. Okay, so here I have used this option to disconnect from the system. Okay, so I have disconnected from the Oracle data. Usually we'll use the login ID and password to connect to the database. By using DISC button, you can disconnect from the database. Okay, I have disconnected from the database, and after some time I have used the connect button CONN to connect back to the database. So CONN, I used the connection button. I've tried to connect to the system, and the username was system and password was my password. Okay, and I have connected to my system. Okay, now I use select star from login. Okay, because login is my table name. What happened? My system login ID was my system. I haven't given any specific name. So system was the login ID, and the login time was 22 February. When I logged in, this part was given here. Similarly, the action was login. Okay, so it was automatically collected. These values are automatically collected by the trigger when the trigger was popped. Okay, when the trigger was popped, after inserting after log on to the schema, whenever the user is logging in, you have to, the trigger was popped and the trigger collected the details of my login. Okay, so same way you can also so the see here I have also again I have used log off. Okay, here instead of log on, when I changed into log off, then my logout detail was given. Okay, so see here I have disconnected, again I connected. So now my login detail was this login detail, and this logout detail was collected from the logout I made here. Okay, so log on and log off through this command, you can log in into this. The details will be collected from the login, and log out details will be connected from the database itself. Okay, by the trigger. So trigger was quite simple than the procedures and functions. Okay, so through triggers you can generate or you can create more alerts and events. Whenever the event happens like insertion, deletion, and updation, you can create a trigger. So trigger is a general pop-up that shows the user that something is happening, and that pop-up also is created by the user only. Okay, so this is what a trigger is. I hope you understood today's class. Okay, thank you all.